everyone. Welcome to Can't We All Get Along? This is a presentation on conflict resolution for children. Just want to introduce myself. My name is Natalie Hernandez. I'm one of the prevention consultants with NJ4S Union. And like I mentioned, this is a conflict resolution presentation created by one of our prevention consultants, Julia Crevis. And this presentation is just like an introduction to conflict, what it really means, how we can easily teach youth how to better resolve conflict, and that conflict is normal and happens really often. So, a little bit about NJ4S. It is a hub of mental health resources and prevention workshops that are available to the public at whatever time. So we go into schools and community centers to talk about things that really matter in our youth today. So that could be anything from like bullying prevention or substance use, just things that our youth are given like a lot of exposure to, but sometimes not enough information. So we try to make it really easy to go into the schools or different community centers to talk about these really important topics. And it is funded by the state. So the state really does understand the importance of having these resources readily available to children everywhere. So today we'll talk about different approaches to conflict, what exactly conflict means, the difference between conflict and bullying, because there is a difference, how you could resolve conflicts, and then what you can do if that conflict is getting out of hand or you can't resolve it. So, if you can just think in your head about conflict, you might have some things in mind. You can possibly think about something more serious and on the macro level, such as like a war or something between political leaders, right? We talk about like Democrat versus Republican or things like that. But conflict can be things that are such, big like that, or they can be smaller things, such as like a conflict of, interests, whether like I like pizza, you like chicken wings or something like that. Like we can argue about that or have a conflict about that. So conflict can be big or small, but there is a definition for it. And it's just the disagreement or clash between two or more people with opposing ideas, needs, or beliefs. So I mentioned a little bit about Republican versus Democrat. This can also be maybe a conflict between two different faiths, or it can be a conflict between other types of ideas. But conflict is something that we all know isn't fun. No one likes to be in conflict with another person. Sometimes we even feel like a conflict within ourselves, like when you don't know what decision to make, or you feel like you don't have control over things. That could be like internal conflict that a lot of people experience. Even youth experience that. Doesn't matter how young they are. And it's something that is unpleasant. It's not really fun, but it does have positive outcomes. And I think that the more that we talk openly about conflict, the more comfortable we are to approach it in a better way and understand that a conflict doesn't mean the end of a friendship or relationship. A conflict doesn't mean that, you don't know how to control your anger. It's something very normal. And I think when kids go through conflict, maybe when they're younger, they kind of want to like be very open about, their feelings, depending on their age, of course. But I'd say that sometimes kids can really lean into that feeling of being disappointed or upset. And as we get older, we're taught to maybe suppress those feelings, maybe learn to like be a little bit more quiet. And of course, it is important to understand when it is beneficial to, express how you feel, and sometimes when it's better to just take a back seat and reflect. We should always encourage our youth to be able to express themselves if they are feeling a certain type of emotion. It doesn't mean that they have to express themselves in a negative or harmful way. It's just so that they can understand that their words and feelings are very valid and they need to be heard if they need to express that. So different types of conflict could mean, oh, one second. Different types of conflicts could be differing ideas. So conflicts can arise when people with different ideas need to work together. That can cause some type of tension because if I have a certain, way of doing my work and you have a certain way of doing your work, we come together, it just doesn't work out. It can also be a misunderstanding. So conflicts can happen when two or more people misinterpret one another. So I think that's another very common type of conflict where it's just miscommunication. Um, Maybe I said something and you interpret it in a way that I really wasn't intending for it to be. It could also be competition in popularity, in sports, academics, friendships. All these things can be very common in conflict, or different interests, such as different opinions. So as you can see, these are just like a small amount of ways that we can be in conflict with one another, but it can be a never ending list of reasons why we get into conflict with other people. So the different types of conflicts could be based on content, so disagreements, such as maybe like your child has to pick a team member to be captain. That can create some conflict, right? Because everybody wants to feel like they could be the leader. Everybody wants to maybe have that role where people are looking up to them, but yeah, it can't always happen. And I think that's a very difficult thing for youth to come into terms with, that you're not always going to get what you want. And it's hard because even adults feel that way too. We want our things to go our way. When it doesn't happen in our way, we feel, maybe, is there something wrong with me? You might feel like self-conscious, you might feel inadequate. So that is something that could make your child feel like upset. It can also be about value. So disagreeing about something that is worth something or has heavy importance, such as disagreements over the importance of finishing a school project early. And lastly, it could be about ego. So something that really impacts someone's self-esteem or self-worth. Maybe someone keeps interrupting you in class. So going back into like the first one with content, maybe if someone like keeps talking over your child, or isn't giving them the space to express themselves, you might feel really upset by that. And that can make someone feel like they're not being heard, they're not given the chance to be themselves, and it can be tough. So there is a difference between conflict and bullying, and it is so important to get these two things defined very clearly. So on the left side, we can see conflict is when both parties express their views or feelings. It's not always negative, and it doesn't have to always be repeated. So sometimes conflict can be like a one and done thing. We have a disagreement over one topic, maybe, what is a topic for our project, our group project. That can cause some disagreements, right? One person wants to do a project on maybe the history of, I don't know, anything, the history of the invention of automobiles or something like that. And another person wants to do the history of the invention of airplanes. Um, some people can be really passionate about both of those different topics. And so that can be a conflict that happens just one time. We're not always going to have this conflict about our project topic every single time we hang out or we're in class together. Whereas bullying, it is always repeated and it's always negative. There's not really a positive point of view or perspective on bullying. It's very intentional. It is meant to be interpreted in a very negative way to hurt someone or make someone feel less than who they are. And it is an expression of someone's attempt to have power or control over someone. When you're having a conflict, maybe about, let's say, the project topic, it's not really that you're trying to gain power. It's just that you just want to do your project on what you want to have it on, right? But bullying is definitely a different power dynamic where someone feels like they want to make someone inferior. And so that is a very distinct difference of conflict and bullying. So since we are talking about conflict, it is worth mentioning that yes, conflict can lead to bullying, right? A conflict can be big or small, but if it happens very often, it can turn into bullying when someone feels like they just always want to, pick a fight with someone and talk, maybe it could be a disagreement about something small, but if they are someone that doesn't want to find solutions, it's okay to not know how to always have solutions to something, but if you deliberately do it constantly, you don't want to find any solutions, and it can be bullying. So, going into the different approaches of conflict, it could be someone that avoids the conflict. So, you just remove yourself from the situation, you ignore it, you try to not even give it your time. Or someone could be delaying the conflict. So, just taking some time to resolve it on its own. You're really not looking to put a whole bunch of effort into finding a solution. You're just going to let it hang out, not really think about it, also, and just thinking like it's going to resolve itself. Or you can be someone that's very confrontational and you do directly go to the person and tell them how you feel, come up with solutions with them. That can also happen too. I'd say with children, you'll probably see them avoid conflicts. I would say it's a mix of all of these, but mostly avoidance and delaying. A lot of youth just don't know how to resolve conflict, or if they do know how to resolve it, they think it's best to maybe confront them in a not so nice way. Or I know a lot of youth, they just lose certain relationships or friendships because they don't know how to resolve conflict. So, we're going to go into 5 different conflict styles. And if you can just, throughout this next couple slides, just think about the people in your care and in your family, the youth. How do they mostly approach conflict?
What do you do when you're feeling do you fight? Do you huff puff then shout?
So, what conflict style did you relate to most? If you can think about the youth in your family, whether that's a niece, a nephew, your son or daughter, or anyone that's in your care, can you think of them as more of a compromising person or a collaborative person? Are they someone that takes charge, like the shark, and needs to make decisions for everyone in a quick way? Um, like the speaker mentioned, you don't have to have one conflict resolution style. You can have a little bit of all of them. Sometimes maybe you need to really lean into one over the other. And it's kind of helpful to also, like the presenter mentioned, the next time you're in a certain conflict, can you do something that's more out of your comfort zone? Can you try to lead into a resolution style that isn't really your norm? It might be difficult to teach your child this just because sometimes children are just really set in their ways and they don't want to do something out of their norm or out of their regular behavior. But we are going to try to make it very simple to teach your child different ways that they can be successful at managing conflict. So we already went over these a little bit in the video, but I'll just touch on them a little bit more. We have the person that's accommodating. They have a low concern for themselves. They're what people call the people pleasers. They do hurt themselves in this process, but usually these types of people are very kind. They don't want to really bother anyone. They want to put other people's feelings over themselves, which does seem like a noble thing to do. However, it does hurt them in the long run because it does lead to resentment over time. You kind of think, why am I always being the bigger person? Why doesn't anyone, apologize to me first or come up with resolutions with me? Um, it could be very difficult to be in this approach. Also, we have the avoidant person. They do have a little concern for themselves. They avoid because they just shut down in certain types of conflict. They don't know what to really do. They don't know if they're going to say the right thing. So they just kind of shut down like a turtle retreating in their shell. This type of style could be helpful when you just need to give someone some time just to like reflect and think about what happened. Um, but to be in a certain avoidance style every single time or all of the time that you're in a conflict with someone isn't really helpful. Some people might think that you just don't have any care, right? You're leaving the conflict, you're leaving the discussion that we're having. Maybe somebody thinks that they're not even concerned about resolving this conflict. Like we mentioned, the shark, they have a high concern for themselves and low concern for others. They want their needs met by using power and they know how to use it. They're not scared to use it. This could be appropriate when you have to stand firmly on like your rights or morals. But it does kind of make people feel a little attacked sometimes. They might feel intimidated or they just feel like they don't know how to um, be in a relationship with someone that's like this. And lastly, we have the compromising approach. So it's a concern for self and other people. It makes sure that people are getting the best of both or all needs. It's not like, oh, I'm, having to let go of this one thing that I really want. Like we both have to just be unhappy because we're not coming to an agreement. It's not like that. Both parties are being as happy and fulfilled as possible, with understanding that you might not always get a perfect solution. That's just life. And it is hard, like I mentioned, for kids, especially to understand that things just might not always go their way. But when two people are very concerned about coming together, creating a solution that's justified and great for both parties, it does make you feel like you can do it with other people too. Because if you can do it with one friendship, you can try doing it with another one. And lastly, we have the collaborating one. So this one is actually the best one because everyone is finding that solution that is more or less perfect in a way. So it does involve discussing the issue, seeing other people's point of view. It does require a lot of commitment, time, and creativity. But this is something that goes past just meeting in the middle. We're both just going to the finish line together and we're both grabbing the trophy. It's not like someone is first place or second. You're just grabbing your ideas, bringing them together, and it's the best solution. So we talked about the different approaches, but what are some steps that you can actually do with your child or teach your child or even teach yourself how to do first? I would say when it comes to teaching our children things, it does come up to us first. How are you going to teach a young person how to resolve conflict if you yourself are still struggling heavily with conflict? Again, we're not perfect people and we do make mistakes sometimes, but we do have to do the work ourselves first and be a role model to our children. I have younger brothers and siblings, and so I try to carry myself in a way that I would want them to look up to me and say, that's actually a good way of handling emotions or handling conflict. So I'm going to try my best when I'm around them or around anyone to just lead with a lot of grace and kindness as much as possible. Um, and just be very respectful when I'm dealing with something that I'm just not really happy about. So skip this video. There are 10 steps. First, we hear this all the time, but being calm goes a long. No one wants to hear in a time where they're just overwhelmed or upset, hey, stay calm. I'm not going to say do that, but you can model calm behavior by maybe taking some deep breaths, giving yourself that time to really feel what you're feeling, um, and not make any impulsive steps because you are feeling a certain type of way. You want to think exactly what just happened. Sometimes when we go through conflicts or disagreements, things are just flooding our brains. We might feel bodily sensations like our heart's racing, or like we can't sit still. We just have to walk around or pace or do something. I'd say this is very useful to teach your youth this, that just try to take some time to understand what exactly just happened. I would think that kids' minds are even more active than adults' minds, right? And so if you as an adult feel okay, like there's so much going on right now, I need to take some time to like, take a step back and relax. Imagine how a child is feeling when they're going through conflict. It could be very difficult. Sometimes they might not even know what is the name of a certain feeling or emotion that they're experiencing. Depending on the age, they might cry about it because they're so upset or angry, or they might, you know, cause a tantrum, or they might just say very harmful words to someone else. So, getting our children to understand what feelings are, what are the words of those feelings, how do I react when this type of situation happens, goes a long way. Next, you want to prepare. So, finding a time and place that's good for everyone to talk about what happened and what you might want to say. People might think that conflict needs to be resolved right then and there, and that's just not true. Um, Oftentimes, when I have conflict with someone, I do like to take my space and to think about what happened, how can I approach this better, and the same can go for children as well. Um, I think it's really important to teach kids that you don't always have to find the solution right away. It is okay to take some time to think about what we want to do next. And I think that is a great practice that kids can always take throughout their lives because we live in a very fast paced society that is like always demanding our attentions, whether that's on social media or the news or schoolwork or anything else. We just have a lot to do. We're always busy. And these days kids are also experiencing that weight too, where they have a lot of pressure to get into a good school or be the best they can be at a sports team. And so letting them understand that it's okay to really sit back and prepare what you're going to say to someone is really helpful. Next is having a very non judgmental state of mind. So, when it gets to that point where maybe two kids are finally ready to have that conversation about what just happened, you want to make sure that they know to not be critical of the other person. Like, pay attention, listen to what they say, and there are certain ways that you can show that you're actually listening by communicating effectively using I statements. We hear that a lot these days. What are I statements? It's basically putting yourself first and not putting the blame on someone else. So you're not saying you made me feel upset because you hit me. It's saying I was really upset when you hit me. I was angry that you cut me in line. I It makes me feel like you don't care about me when you cut me in line. So, changing the framework of our language is really helpful because sometimes the other party can feel attacked by what you say. If you're constantly pointing fingers at them and putting the blame on them, you did this to me, you're not a good friend, you're terrible, you suck. No one is going to want to talk to you if you use that type of language. And that is very common in our youth is they want to put the blame on someone else. But it's actually very responsible when you can say your I statements. I feel this, I feel that. I didn't like this. I would like more if you can do this. Those are very powerful statements. And you're pointing out the specific behavior and you're not bashing the person. So you're refraining from using any statements that are blameful and insulting. Along with positive communication and showing someone that you're listening is body language. A huge percentage of communication is actually body language. That's eye contact, nodding your head, using welcoming body language. And so, some things that we can teach our kids is maybe if you're having a disagreement with someone or you're just having a conflict, maybe you don't want to cross your arms and look away. And if someone is talking to you, you're just like, yeah, whatever. Nobody wants to talk to someone that's like, because you don't feel like you're being welcomed in that conversation. So, teaching our kids, it's very simple body language, such as eye contact and nodding your head, can be very helpful for them. It might take some adjustment because these things are difficult even for adults. And depending on who you're talking to, you might feel a little bit more intimidated or more shy, but practice makes permanent. So, practicing eye contact with your child, practicing how to approach, positive body language in conflict is really helpful. This is very similar to the last couple of slides, but when you are showing that you listen to someone, you're not only thinking about yourself, right? And how is this conflict going to play out so that it works best in my interest? You're thinking about the other person. So that means that you're displaying a level of empathy by looking at them, by maybe paraphrasing what they said. So you can say, so what I'm hearing from what you just said is that you didn't like when I cut you in line, getting really specific about what they said so that you can show that you're listening to them. Um, and so you want to imagine like how they were feeling at the moment. And that is what empathy is, right? You're putting yourself in their shoes. You're feeling what it might feel like to experience what they felt or what they went through. And I think the sooner that we teach kids empathy, the more successful they'll be at, being a great human being to other people and to themselves because they'll always have a soft spot for someone's feelings. And I don't think you can get enough of that. It makes people great listeners, great friends, great coworkers when they're able to actively listen and put people's feelings as if they were their own. Number eight is reflecting on the other side. So thinking about the other person's perspective and where they might be coming from. Very similar to the last one, having an empathetic approach and thinking about your own actions as well. So yes, like the actions that you did hurt someone or made someone feel not so nice. And that made them feel this way. So, really taking accountability and being able to see how they felt. One of the last steps is talking about a resolution. So, that's talking about some ways that you can solve the problem that's in a collaborative effort. Like we saw the different animals, the collaborating fox, right, is like the best approach. So this can take some time as well. It doesn't have to happen right then and there, but it is, a great point to be at these stages of conflict resolution because that means that you were able to get through all the stages before. Sometimes when you're having a discussion with someone about their feelings, you might stop at like step number 4 or 5 because maybe one person's just feeling really overwhelmed and they're not ready to continue the conversation, and that's okay. But getting to this stage in conflict resolution means that both parties or more were able to get past all of the negative feelings, get past like the shyness or the ickiness that you might feel about the certain conflict. And lastly, you can circle back. So, this is something that isn't really done often, but I think should be done more often. It's when you're able to pick a time to just talk about if the conflict is still working out. So, sometimes you might pick a certain conflict resolution and it's not actually the best idea. Maybe some people are still feeling like inadequate, they're not really feeling like anything changed. And so, it's perfectly fine to go back into what was said, the solution, and see if it still works, or maybe come up with something else. So here's an example about a conflict resolution style. So Layla and Kat are both on the cheerleading team, and Layla was picked to be the cheer captain. Kat was upset since she's been cheering since she was 5, and she's great at it. But Kat decided she wasn't going to be on the team anymore. So Layla tries to convince Kat to stay on the team, but it's no help. She calls Kat selfish and childish, which makes her more upset. So what Layla and Kat can both do in this situation is take some time to think about what happened, right? Take some time out to cool down and relax. They can think about what actually just happened. And so she thinks about what she said to Kat that was not nice. And she realizes it actually goes against her values as a cheer captain and also her friend. So they prepare. Lila texts Kat to schedule a good time for them to talk privately outside of school. And that third part, I think, could be very helpful with kids because sometimes resolving a conflict in school when there's other people involved, other friends, can maybe exacerbate some things, and it could be kind of like instigating. A lot of kids just like to do things for the fun of it or for the entertainment. And so maybe if two, kids are having a conversation about something, other people might want to butt in and make it like a bigger thing than it is. So definitely, if you can, see if maybe your child's conflict can be resolved outside of school, somewhere that's safe, and makes them a little bit more comfortable. So going to number 4 is don't judge. So they take turns expressing their feelings, and they make a deal to be kind and open minded. Next, they communicated effectively. What can Layla say to express her feelings? So, of course, like Kat was upset by what Layla said. That was harmful, right? So thinking about what can Layla say to really express maybe that she's sorry or that she should have never said that and that it was like immature of her to say something like that. So she can say, I felt frustrated when you quit the cheer team because you're a great friend and team member. You're an amazing cheerleader and you deserve to stay on the team. That is like an A plus statement to say in a conflict. And it might take, your child years and years to say something as eloquent or as straightforward, but it's definitely possible. They also make sure to use eye contact, like we mentioned. So Kat makes sure that she's looking at Layla and that she's not having like a very loud, overbearing tone. She is committed to staying into this discussion. They actively listen, so Kat and Lila both pay attention to each other without interrupting. This is big. Even adults struggle with this a lot when you are saying something to someone and then someone just interrupts you. Like you didn't even finish what you had to say. It's very disrespectful and it comes off as like someone not even caring about what you have to say. Next, they reflect on the other person's side. So, what could Kat say to express her feelings? She can say, I know you're frustrated, and I was frustrated too when I didn't make captain, but calling me selfish and immature was uncalled for and made me feel even worse. So, what she's doing here is saying exactly what the behavior was. So, she's like, you called me selfish, you called me immature, and that made me feel like this. It's not saying you called me selfish, you're immature, you're a terrible friend, we're never going to be friends again. I don't know how you could do this to me. It's just calling out and pointing out the exact specific behavior that wasn't pleasant. And next, they talk about the resolution. So they both apologize, which is an amazing step into conflict resolution. And Layla tells Kat that she's always welcome back on the team. So, circling back on this, Kat appreciates Layla's offer about staying on the team and says that she's going to think about it and she'll let her know by next week if she's still interested in being on the team. But even after both Kat and Layla express themselves very confidently and kindly, what if it just doesn't work? They tried their best, they listened to one another, they didn't say anything harmful. What then? You seek others' help to mediate. This is something that is very difficult for youth because they want to feel like they can get it done all on their own. But that isn't always the case. And so, getting kids to understand that it's perfectly fine to speak to trusted adults about managing conflict resolution is amazing. I'd say the sooner the better because you don't want to teach your child that it's okay to go talk to adults when they're maybe in middle school or going into high school. They should understand from a very young age that it's actually amazing and can even be cool of you to go into not doctor, go to a trusted adult to talk about how you just need help with a certain conflict. So that means going to a parent, which probably won't be number one, depending on the relationship that your child has with you. Maybe they, don't want to get you involved. They feel a little shy about it, or they just don't want to get in trouble. They might go to a teacher. They can go to anyone, a coach, a guidance counselor, maybe someone at church, a religious leader, or another family or a friend that is maybe older than them. But going back into why youth might not be comfortable going to you as like their caregiver or parent is because they do fear what you have to say. I remember being a kid and feeling like I'm not going to get the support from my family or my parent with a certain issue because they might really judge me. They might maybe punish me for having a certain type of conflict. And so being very approachable to youth is number one. You want to leave open doors of communication by making sure that you're having conversations that are free of stigma, free of judgment, and incorporate a whole lot of compassion, patience, and understanding.